strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Welcome to Trentovision, where bad ideas get pulverized and the truth will set you free. Trentovision is hosted by Tom Trento. Tom can be reached at 561-319-5533 or Tom at trentovision.tv. Listen and watch every weekday from 3 to 6 p.m. on AM 1470 WNN and trentovision.tv. Now, let's get a peek at Tom's view of the world. Here's Tom Trento.
What's the point? Hey, Joe. Thanks for the tip, man. How was it? Who ate? All three of you? Did you?
No, I didn't.
No. Did you? What did you have?
The Stromboli.
What's the name of the place?
Calzone, I'm sorry.
Calzone, you had the Stromboli.
Boca's Best.
Boca's Best. Okay, here we go. A spot for Boca's Best. Mark, do a testimonial. How was it?
It was great, fantastic.
Good. The sauce just no. You have to do it like the sauce just was like an elixir on my taste buds, and it just exploded in a sense of garlic and cheese.
It was a palatal delight. Okay, they had actually, it's really good. It's really good.
Okay, so Boca's Best. We should go get them as an advertiser.
Sure,
What is the difference between a calzone and a stromboli? They both look the same in the box.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I think one has meat in it. No, I think they both can have meat in it. And I'm Italian. I should know that, but I don't know.
Can somebody from Boca's Best call us and
Yeah,
tell us
Boca's Best.
at 1-888-565-1470?
Speaking of the phone number, we're fascinated with Cynthia. Let's hold her off for a second. An Egyptian activist, and we've been going through her life in Egypt, basically, and life under a dictatorship. You know, all of us here have just enjoyed that which we don't even appreciate at times, this freedom and ability to meet with 7 of your friends and talk about politics and not worry if anybody's going to be knocking on your door in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Unbelievable stuff. But what we're doing today, folks, trentovision.tv, WNN, we're taking a look at our continued analysis of the Middle East as it relates to the geopolitics of the United States and the implications for each one of you sitting in your cars, driving around South Florida, listening on iHeartRadio. You can do that. Go to South Florida, type in WNN on your iHeartRadio application, and then you'll find WNN, lock it in. You can listen to us anywhere you get a telephone signal in the world. And many of us just take for granted this thing called freedom. Well, we have Cynthia with us today, and grew up in Egypt, and was involved, or how involved? Let's get Cynthia back. And if you want to speak with Cynthia, you can give us a call, 888-565-1470. Once again, 888-565-1470. Let's get Cynthia up on the Skype. We got a good Skype connection coming out of Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. That's a great place. Cynthia Farhat. Hi, welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay. We left off, and I want to just conclude this, then we're going to open it up for discussion and really what you did over the weekend. We left off where you were the Arab Spring. What went on? Give us the right story, and jump in wherever you think the Arab Spring, that we understand the Arab Spring, started. What developed and what really occurred?
Actually, it has been an accumulation of 6 decades of tyranny. It wasn't something that was sparked overnight. It has been boiling for 60 years, and for 10 years we have done several protests in Egypt. But the January 25th of 2011 sparked because the military was planning to stage a coup against Mubarak's regime, and because they are just pragmatist, short-sighted opportunists, they decided to jump at the opportunity of the 25th of January protests that we and everyone that participated in it. I didn't participate in it myself, but all my friends did. And I remember my conversation with them on the phone. I told them, it's just going to be like any other protest. We're going to be standing in the street barking like dogs, and then one of us might and might not get tortured, one might and might not get abducted, and one might get raped. So it is really, I don't see the point of it. And that was the discussion I had with my friends that went to the protest that day. It was supposed to be going this way. It was also on the Police Appreciation Day, which is on January the 25th, and Egyptian police is known for its absolute horrific brutality. And that how it was supposed to happen. But on the 27th of January, the military gave a statement, and it said, we support the people's legitimate demands, which were the elimination of torture and civil rights. Basically, that's what it was about, just civil and economic rights. And what happened was they jumped at the opportunity and decided to stage a coup against Mubarak because they were against him. He was going to give the presidency to his son, which was going to change the face of Egypt's military oligarchy and military men that governed it for 60 years to a civilian state. And that is exactly what they didn't want to do. There were two players in that game. It was Tantawi and the chief of intelligence, which was Omar Suleiman. So basically, these were the players who were using the protesters. But someone from military intelligence, because we were constantly under surveillance, gave me a call that day on the 27th, and he said, so you say we're going to stage a coup. We are going to come with revolutionary legitimacy. And he said that they're going to overthrow Mubarak by revolutionary legitimacy. And I told him that is the most stupid idea I've ever heard in my life, because if you empower the people to think that they have thrown a dictatorship, they're going to come after you and everyone that will act like you. And this is exactly what happened. And the people felt empowered, and once you start feeling free, and I speak and say this from experience, no one can stop you afterwards, not even death or intimidation or threats. So they felt empowered, and that's why they're in the streets now in millions, not thousands, millions.
You say they felt empowered. Who are the they specifically? Who are you talking about?
All Egyptian people.
This is back. This is back. Yeah, this
women,
is
men,
this,
everyone.
This is back in. This is back in January, February, 2011, and when everybody was in the streets, Tahrir Square, all of that. We had Americans. We had some jihadis, believe it or not, that we battle here in America. Travel, some Egyptian jihadis traveled to Tahrir Square and were there, helping overthrow Mubarak, waving flags and running around and doing all of that. Yeah. It was a hodgepodge. It looked to us as a hodgepodge of the Google 30-year-olds who had this idea of some sort of democracy, and then a whole bunch of other people that were some bad people in there too.
Because it was inevitable. First of all, Mubarak was in his mid-80s, so he was not going to live forever. So the fact that Mubarak was getting out, that was going to happen. Jihadis were flying to Tahrir Square because the military was allowing. The military dictatorship allowed 3,000 jihadis in March 2011 to enter the country to combat us, not to combat anyone else, because Islamists were getting kicked out of Tahrir Square, and I've seen this with my own eyes. It's not a report. I was there. I saw the members of the Muslim Brotherhood, or identified by the length of their beard, used to get kicked out of Tahrir Square. It was safer for a blonde woman, Western or Egyptian, to stand in the middle of the crowd, but not a man who had a Muslim Brotherhood beard, because that was the case. And actually, when I was protesting in Tahrir Square, random people would come to offer their support and help to protect me and stand as bodyguards for me. And they didn't even know me. They didn't know anything about me, or who I was, or my name, or religious, or philosophical, or political background. But if you were a member of the Brotherhood, they would get kicked out and beaten. And I have seen that. So these jihadists came for the people in Tahrir Square to combat them, and not the other way round, to assist the dictatorship against us.
Yeah, but how do we get from the Brotherhood being thrown out to the Brotherhood running the joint? How'd that happen?
Because President Obama's administration told the military, hand power to civilians, and according to, these are the fruits of Mubarak's criminal regime, by the way. He always gave absolute political freedom to the Islamists. The Muslim Brotherhoods were never banned. My group was banned. I was banned. Even in 2011, March 2011, the Muslim Brotherhood strategist Khairat al-Shatir, who was also running for presidency, said that they were never banned under Mubarak. They were only banned for 20 years, from 1954 till 1974. And then they had absolute political freedom. And occasionally they were attacked so that Mubarak would remind them who's the boss. After Aljazair's Islamist victory in the elections in 1992, that was out of the Muslim Brotherhood strategist's mouth, that they were not banned and they had absolute freedom to practice their political ideology. So they were organized, and we could not meet in a room in a private residence to discuss politics. So they had absolute control of everything. When the U.S. asked the military to step down, they handed them power on a plate. There was no elections in Egypt. A country that rapes, abducts, and exiles political opposition and dissidents does not host free and fair elections. It is a fake. They're faking democracy, just like Russia is right now. All these guys in military, people, including Mubarak himself, were trained under the KGB. It's just KGB tactics. There was no election. And they're going to have a referendum to pass the constitution. There's not going to be a referendum. That's just all for media show.
Cynthia, I got a question for you. For our audience, can you explain the difference between the Muslim Brotherhood supporters and the Muslim Brotherhood as a party and the Islamist, and what is the main core difference, as far as between the two ideologies?
Between
the Islamists and the Muslim Brotherhood.
Muslim Brotherhood are Islamists. Islamists are the people that want to implement Islamic law in politics, that want to establish Sharia law. And the Muslim Brotherhood are Islamist because that's exactly what they want to do. They want to establish an international caliphate. And they even said that. And the current constitution that they will pass is going to allow them to do that. There's an article in this Nazi constitutional draft that says that the capital of Egypt does not have to be Cairo. That is a very suspicious article, and if someone knows what Khilafah is, which is Islamic imperialism, they know what this means. So it is very dangerous. It is more dangerous than Al-Qaeda because it is stealth, and they're wearing suits. So that is basically it.
CJ, you have a question?
Yes, I do. I would like to ask you, first one is a little bit of a two-part. First of all, can you tell us a little bit about what you consider a moderate Muslim to be? Earlier in the first hour, you made mention of moderate Muslims being neighborly with the Coptics in Egypt and not having a problem getting along. And the other thing is for our audience, since you studied it so deeply, can you tell us a little bit and explain a little bit about what Sharia law means? And when we talk about the establishment of Sharia law in Egypt and we see it, the efforts to establish it here, what does that really mean?
These are great questions. The first question is, the moderate Muslim only has one definition because it has been abused so badly here in the West, unfortunately. But the moderate Muslim is the Muslim who believes that he does not want to be governed by a Nazi law, and he does not want to be governed under a totalitarian state. Moderate Muslim is the person who wants to live under secularism and not Sharia. There is absolutely no other definition, and there are millions of those in Egypt. And they're currently being butchered in the street for it. They're actually paying the price for it with their own blood. So they have a lot to prove there. And there's a lot of credibility there. And these are the people that also established my party with me. The vast majority of our political party were Muslims. Actually, a very tiny fraction were Christian and atheists. So we do believe that there are plenty of Muslims that are terrified because they know what Sharia law is, which leads to the second question. Under Sharia law, there's nothing called citizenship. There's nothing called nationality. Your nationality is and your allegiance is to the Wali al-Amr, which is the Muslim ruler, and his whims. These are the basics. And if you are a woman, or if you are an underage child, or if you are a Muslim man even with a little bit of a questionable opinion, you can be targeted for blasphemy. You can be targeted of all sorts of punishment. The Islamic penal law under Sharia is very, very frightening. You can get your head chopped off for the crime of blasphemy publicly, or crucified. Under Sharia law, you get your hands chopped off for stealing dates and fruit. Under Sharia law, there's no such thing as an underage child. Under Sharia law, slavery is legal, which is, in the current Egyptian constitution, they refuse to incriminate slavery because slavery is legal, including sexual slavery. And if you're a slave, and the definition is pretty wild. You can be, anyone can be a slave, including Muslims themselves. They can be enslaved. And that has been the actual history. Muslims have been enslaved under Sharia law and sold and bought and used and killed. And there would be no punishment if you own one of those. And by the way, slavery is actually applied in Egypt as we speak. And under Mubarak, it was legal. You could buy a slave, a 6-year-old slave, under the banner of a servant or servitude for as less as $100 a month. You can own your own slave, a 6-year-old. Wow. So it is a pretty disgusting criminal code of
with the analogy, Cynthia,
it is pretty vile.
Would the analogy be simplified for the audience, for the viewers, the listeners? The direction that Egypt is moving under the Muslim Brotherhood with the goal of establishing the caliphate and all that you just described, all the horrors, analogously on the Shia side would be similar to the Iranian Ayatollahs and the Supreme Ayatollah running the show.
Yes, the Supreme Guide of what they call the Supreme Guide of the Brotherhood, that is going to be the Ayatollah. And that is going on. But Egypt had always had Sharia law in the constitution under Sadat. He was the one. They always say here in the West that he is moderate, but Sadat also was, in my book, one of the worst people that ever existed in the history of this planet. He was the one who introduced Sharia law in the Egyptian constitution in 1971.
That's right.
So we did have that law for 40 years.
Right.
The difference is, under the 1971 constitution, where the principles of Sharia law were the principal source of legislation, they were not clearly defined. And you could some lawyers would make an argument in court, for example, that that means that you have to be friendly with your neighbor, or you have to be tolerant, and you could put anything, any sticker there, and it would work. But under the current Nazi document that is going to pass, by the way, in the fake referendum on December 15th, Sharia law is pretty well described. In Article 221, they say that it is the traditional law from Sunni jurisprudence. When you say that, it means that they're going to apply the laws of Taliban and Saudi Arabia. So
Holy cow.
it's going to be official from a constitutional theocracy to an absolute theocracy.
Yeah. Mark, you had a question, and then we'll proceed with the
Right,
timeline and how she got here to the States.
Yeah, two parts here. All right, part one is, have you noticed a increase in just on the people in the street, with especially the Islamists and the Muslim Brotherhood, is a increase in Jew hatred and want to attack Israel? And the second part is there any groups that you found here in the States, on universities or anything, that are outraged by this the treatment of women, the treatment of gays, the treatment of all the liberal issues, if you will? That, like, where are the liberal groups? Are you finding any support in that?
Actually, ironically, since Tahrir protest in the 25th of January 2011, I did not see that coming, by the way, because one of our party's main objectives was to target anti-Semitism, because it's disgusting, as you know. So I was surprised to see in Tahrir Square that when some Islamists would try to scream slogans against Israel and against the Jews, no one would repeat the slogans after them, because what happened was they finally identified the enemy. Since 1952, Nasser, Sadat, Mubarak, they all played the same tired KGB game, which is to direct animosity outside of themselves to a different political, religious, or ideological group. And Israel was a very convenient target for these criminals in Egypt because it was across the border. So you could always target them and say whatever you want, and Mubarak's newspaper, and I monitored that myself, since 2001, since September 11th, until the last day he ruled, every single day, without an exception, and that is a challenge, no one can disprove it, and the national state-controlled newspaper, there was anti-Semitism on the first page. Something about a news about how Mubarak is great and what he has done in his glory, and the next immediate would be against the Jews or Israel. So he was definitely fostering this anti-Semitism, and right now on the street, it's not there. It's not there because they identified the enemy. It's not the Jews' fault anymore. It's theirs. So there is a difference, but of course among the Islamists themselves and the Muslim Brotherhood, they're incredibly anti-Semitic. And actually, when they are arresting and torturing and raping and murdering people in the streets right now as we speak, they call them Jews and Zionists. Like, for example, the disastrous abduction and torture of Ambassador Yahya Negm, the Egyptian ambassador to Venezuela, who was in exile under Mubarak's regime from 2005 till 2011, who just came. He was among the protesters. Well, they abducted him from the street last Wednesday, tortured him, horrifying torture that he said it felt like a Nazi camp, and they were calling him a Zionist and an agent of the Jews in America while they were beating him up. So the people that are currently getting the U.S. military aid are incredibly anti-Semitic, and they don't make a secret out of it. It's not a secret.
When you say anti-Semitic, I just want to qualify that.
You got to speak into the mic. You can't hear you.
I said when you say anti-Semitic, I just want to qualify that because we have anti-Semitism here in the United States. When you say anti-Semitic, you're talking about Hitler-esque, Hitler-style anti-Semitic, where they want to fire up the gas ovens and eradicate people. Am I correct?
Oh yes. They don't think that. No, they do not believe in the existence of Jews. They don't want them to exist and breathe. That is not good enough. It's not about this whole thing about Israel and Palestine. It's just more about the Jews existing. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's what I've been saying
CJ,
forever.
CJ is our token Jew here, and we have a token Unitarian and a token Christian. Let's do this because
now we have token Coptic Christians.
I'm going on a road of your journey for the viewers and listeners. It is 31 minutes past the hour on Monday, December 10th. Trento Vision. We got to tell people what we're doing. We're getting so wrapped up in the conversation.
Yeah.
You're on TrentoVision.tv on the video side. On the radio side, you're on WNN 1470, broadcasting out of Boca Raton, Florida. We're here at 3 to 6 o'clock every day, dealing with national security issues, Middle East issues, Islamic Jihad issues, and just plain old common sense issues as to how to run a civilized nation. We needed to get rid of this president in order to improve the civilized idea of America, but maybe there's more of them than us. In any event, we're here to provide information why we have to stop this president. And in particular, today's topic, stop this president as he emboldens, as he appeases, as he pays for the Muslim Brotherhood's advancement in Egypt, the historic country of Egypt. That's what, 10,000 years old, something like that. But let's get back to your journey through the so-called Arab Spring. I don't like that term at all, but we're using it.
Either. Yeah.
We're using it as a reference point for the viewers and listeners. When did you say, I got to get out of Dodge? What led up to that, and when was the day you departed and got out of there?
I got out of there after I knew that that it was a moral obligation to be among these people who are screaming freedom, by the way. When I was standing in Tahrir Square, let me tell you, it was just absolutely amazing. And I will never feel and never felt as free as I felt right there. When I was screaming freedom, and Muslim, Christian, atheist, and Baha'i people were just screaming it out after me. These people wanted freedom, nothing else. So it was a moral obligation to be there. If you are Egyptian, everyone had to be there because that's what it was about. And and it was pretty well identified what our demands were. And in late January, Mubarak's prime minister asked me to meet with him. He sent me, of course, someone from state security to ask me. On the phone, they told me, Ahmed Shafiq, Mubarak's prime minister, wants to meet with you to know the demands of protesters. And I told him immediately, unlike you, I do not speak for unelected people, and I refused to meet with him. And I told him the demands are pretty obvious. Mubarak has to step down. We have to have economic and social and religious liberties. These are the demands. These are the demands of Tahrir Square. Right and left media, everyone, no one communicated that these were demands, although people were screaming them from the top of their lungs, sadly.
Question? Yeah. Cynthia, what kind of political party were you trying to establish?
We actually, it always remained under establishment. They never allowed us to become official because we were actually the solution, and they did not want us to be represented in the community nor in front of the international community, neither nationally nor internationally. It was basically about freedom, economic freedom, capitalism, secularism, just separation of mosque and state, and normalization with Israel, not the pseudo truce that Egypt has, just normalization and peace with Israel. These were our objectives.
That is interesting.
Well, when did you leave? When did you get on an airplane and leave?
I got out of Egypt late October 2011. Literally with my suitcase. Literally, just my suitcase.
Did you have a place? Did you have a place to go, or you just said, "I'll go to America"?
No, I had to go to America. I had a visa because I was supposed to give a talk here, and someone from military intelligence told me it's over. You're next. Literally, he said that you are next, and I had to get out of there because I knew that they meant it.
So, all right, you came to the United States in October a year ago, just about a year, right?
Yes.
And what's occurred? Get us up to.
What have you been up to?
Yeah, get us up to speed, and then we'll get into Saturday's events.
Actually, this comes down to the second question with what I've been seeing in American academia, which is an absolute horror and frightening. It is something
Tell us about it. Yeah.
So I've seen, unfortunately, I've been in contact with, I've seen what's going on in American academia, and I've seen people, and I've even had a screaming match with John Esposito. So,
he's a quality act. He's a quality act, yes.
So, what's going on here, I'm very sad, and of course we knew that President Obama's re-election was going to mean bloodbath in Egypt and blood in the streets, and it's happening.
And what are you doing here in the States? What is your mission? You're in two organizations. What is your mission, and how did that lead up to Saturday's event?
Actually, my mission here is exactly what my mission was in Egypt, which is to raise awareness to what's going on, because America has to redefine its national security's best interest. Because if there's any American administration that would think that funding and arming Islamists is going to be in its national security's best interest, that is a disaster right there. That is a disaster. So America has to define its own values and define what it actually stands for, which is American values, the Constitution, the Founding Fathers, to be able to define its international policies. And currently, there is a disaster, an absolute disaster, when President Obama decides to send military weapons. According to the Washington Times last week, they're going to send them tanks and fighter jets. So that is horror. You're going to send people who live and breathe to destroy the West, the weapons to do it. I think that's suicide. So that is my...
you sound like, that's your mission. Yeah, you sound like a Zionist crusader,
they've been calling me that since I was a kid
in
Egypt, and I didn't know what it meant. I used to tell him, you hate that. And he said, that's absolutely horrible. I tell him, so whatever you think is bad, I am it.
That's it, right, exactly. Well, it's fascinating what you're talking about. There's a dark side to all this that we'll get into in a minute, but I think we have someone that may know you on the line. Are you there, Jerry?
Yes, I do.
The caller, Jerry, are you there? Well, we're looking for the caller, Jerry, but we'll get him in a minute. We have a.
He's gone.
He'll call back. He'll call back in. All right.
He's on the line. He's not speaking. Jerry.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Only when
there he is.
Only when you talk, Jerry. That's how this works.
Yeah, louder.
Okay, is that better?
Yes,
That's
it is.
Great.
Can you hear him, Cynthia?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Okay. Is that Cynthia on the line?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Happy Hanukkah.
Well, Hag Sameach. Cynthia, this is Jerry Gordon. Firstly, I want to commend you for your courage in getting these demonstrations out in the District of Columbia. But I want to ask you a couple of pointed questions. Last year, even before the onset of Mr. Morsi's election, something like in excess of 100,000 Copts fled to their diaspora. What is going to happen
hear you,
now?
I'm afraid. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So, can you please repeat the question after he says it? Because
Well, hang on.
This one?
We're adjusting
one?
something.
Turn it way up.
We're adjusting something that may help you here.
This way?
If you saw our studio, we're duct taping things together.
No, it's
Hang
not
on.
turning.
Hello, 1, 2, 3, 4. Go ahead, Jerry. You talk, Jerry.
Okay, Cynthia, can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Okay, fine. Firstly, I want to commend you for this demonstration in Washington over the weekend to get the message out to their media and perhaps even to the White House, even though I think it's indifferent. Even before Morsi's election, as I consider him the first Muslim Brotherhood president in Egypt, over 100,000 Copts fled to the diaspora. What is the estimate currently of the Coptic community in Egypt who would pick up stakes and leave?
The estimate of the number of Coptic community that are trying to leave Egypt?
Yes,
That are leaving Egypt.
and are leaving because of.
Egypt. Right now, what the numbers we have is that there are 100,000 people that left Egypt, both Muslim and Christian. But everyone is actually fleeing Egypt, not just Copts. But I would like to tell you that, you know, the Morsi is not the first Muslim Brotherhood president. The first Muslim Brotherhood president was Gamal Abdel Nasser in 1952. Gamal Abdel Nasser swore allegiance to the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood, Hassan al-Banna, on a gun in Quran in 1947.
Well, if that is in fact the heritage of Egypt, what can we expect on December the 15th with this referendum?
That's a great question. What you expect is that it's going to pass. They're going to pass the current Nazi document because, of course, they are going, you know, regimes that kill people on the street in front of TV cameras and torture them in front of TV cameras do not respect free and fair votes. So they are going to pass the referendum, unfortunately.
Now, Cynthia, is this a nationwide vote where every voting age person is going to go to the polls and vote?
Yes, but of course it is going to happen under terrifying circumstances with Islamists holding swords, because currently they're chopping people up with swords in my neighborhood in Cairo, which is Heliopolis. So it's going to happen under these circumstances. So the majority of people that oppose it will not vote, and because they're not suicidal. And the people that will go actually vote, because they're incredibly angry, more than they're scared, it's going to be rigged, just like all the elections in the past 6 decades.
But Cynthia, there's another factor, and this has been publicized quite a bit regarding polls that have been taken. And Jerry, you're familiar with these polls.
Particularly the Pew Trust polls.
Sure. 2010. That's in 2010, and then a poll very recently. And the overwhelming majority of those polled in, and these are legitimate polls. They're legitimate organizations. That the numbers are astonishing as to how many citizens of Egypt want Sharia law. Want Sharia law either as part of the Constitution or want to follow all of Sharia law. Is that not the case? Do the majority of citizens in Egypt want Jeffersonian democracy? Or is there a desire for Sharia law in Egypt?
And just to back Tom's figures up, it's the exact figures on the Pew Research are 84% of Egyptian Muslims support the death penalty for leaving Islam.
On apostasy, on the apostasy issue. Yeah, what is help us out with that data.
Okay, I'm going to answer your question with a question, although I hate doing that.
That's okay.
But let's imagine that we had a poll under Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union. If people were asked, do you agree to uphold the status quo, or you want to change it? What do you think the vast majority of the answer would be?
Yeah, under Nazi Germany, yeah, the poll would not reflect the right attitude of the people.
Under the Soviet Union, it's exactly the same thing. If someone said, I want Sharia law, it means they say, I'm upholding the status quo, because it has been in the Constitution and has been applied for 40 years. It's not that they live under this secular democracy and they want to subvert it to Taliban. Then that's not the case. So when they say that, it means because if you are going to say the opposite, like me, someone is going to call you at 2 a.m. in the morning and tell you, I want your head in my freezer. And I don't think that this is something that a lot of people would sign for. So there's no such thing as polls under dictatorships and police states if you're going to get raped and killed for saying what you actually think.
But also,
absolutely reject that.
But also in countries like Jordan, which is not truly a dictatorship, you have 80% of Jordanian Muslims supporting the death penalty for apostasy, and a large majority are supporting Sharia Islam. And also in Egypt, when they actually had a vote for president, I mean, over half voted for either the Islamist or the Muslim Brotherhood candidate.
No, we didn't have a vote for president, I'm afraid. I'm sorry to disagree, but we did not have, because, you know, the military regime, the military dictatorship was overseeing this vote. And they're the ones who kicked me out. If they think that a 30-year-old woman, unarmed, is scary and a threat, they do not hold free and fair elections. If they're going to kill my friend in his 20s in the street with armored vehicles, they do not hold free and fair elections afterwards. They do not wake up one day and say, oh, I'm feeling dandy today, let's hold free and fair elections. That doesn't happen. There was no elections in Egypt. And when it comes to Jordan, it means that they're telling the king, yes, we're voting for the status quo. Please, we're not dissidents. Please, we're not infidels. Don't come after us. Well, that's what I hear.
Well, we'll take it out of the Middle East and let's.
You got to hold the mic. It's hard. You can't hear you.
Take it out of the Middle East and then let's drag it onto the college campuses, the campuses here in the United States, where they also did research polls, and we're finding 26% of Muslims actually support Bin Laden and his actions. And
no, that wasn't college campus. That was a poll of Muslims in the United States.
In the United States,
yeah.
But they said on college campuses.
It was all Muslims, and there was over 50% either agreed with Al Qaeda or Al Qaeda methods to advance Sharia law in the United States.
Yeah, where they're free to say what they think.
Yeah, they can say whatever they want to.
Yeah.
You know, this whole thing, Jerry, weigh in on this, but this whole issue, Cynthia, comes down to whether or not. Look at the battle we have here in the United States. Who wants socialism? It looks like there may be more socialists in the United States than those of us who are anti-socialism. The balance may have shifted. Your thoughts, Jerry?
You know, you've got campaign tableaus with the president going out to Michigan, fighting against things like the right to life legislation, which we understand the governor is going to sign. And the other stuff about soaking the rich in terms of his reset of the tax situation for the fiscal cliff. But I want to get to address a question back to Cynthia and to you guys, because of something that is possibly about to occur in the state of Florida in the new legislative session. And that is reset legislation on dealing with Sharia, which didn't pass, although it should have passed in the last session. Given what is happening in Egypt and the focus of the attention on essentially this constitutional referendum on the 15th of December, should, as Cynthia and others on this program have been talking about, it gets passed resoundingly because of what we've talked about. How does that impact on, quote, those anti-Sharia initiatives here in the United States and most immediately in Florida?
Yeah.
Good. These are great questions. And But what you said about Muslims in America is absolutely right. What you said about socialism in America is absolutely right. But you talk to someone who came from the Soviet Union who lives in America, they're going to scream if they said that. You come to talk to someone who lived under Sharia law from the Iranian community or the Iranian community or from the Afghani community or the Egyptian community, and they will scream in horror. And that is just exactly the case. And that is what has been happening. Muslims in America are that haven't lived under Sharia law have been indoctrinated with the blessings of the leftist propaganda Soviet-style machine that is taking control of campuses and the funding of the Wahhabis and their petrodollars that is overwhelming the media and campuses. And of course they will say that. But if you come from living under Sharia law, you would cry at the thought of it. And actually, since I came here, I have Muslim political leaders, dissidents, media personalities calling me in tears out of horror and frightened. So, if you lived under Sharia law, you understand. If you lived under the Soviet Union, you understand. But here, I don't know what these people are thinking, honestly.
Well, part of what they're thinking, I could tell you very clearly because I personally have spent a lot of time on college campuses in the United States, nose to nose, face to face, mano a mano with the Brotherhood at the MSA, Muslim Student Association, going up to these people on Israel Apartheid Week or whatever the situation is, protests around the United States on corners, walking in with our cameras, being there, scores of these events, thousands of these people speaking to them. George Galloway at UCI, University of California at Irvine, 700, 800 Muslims, and me and 2 or 3 other people in the room. And I've spoken to hundreds of these people, and many, 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 particularly if they're Arabic speaking, want Sharia law. They know what it is. They hate the West. They follow Yosef Qaradari. They're disciples of Al-Qaeda. The philosophy, they hate everything about America, the sexualization of America, the movies, the everything. They want real life Sharia law, and they're 25 years old.
Yeah,
they do. It's vile and disgusting and criminal, and they are indoctrinated and funded by the Saudi and the Iranian
of course,
machine and petrodollars. But you go to the ones that actually, why don't they go to Saudi Arabia? That's a legitimate question.
Yeah, well, that's what we ask them all the time.
Infidel hellhole of America and its capitalism and its media and its, the bikinis and the women and the hair and all this stuff. Let's go to Saudi Arabia. So I think I've discussed that with a lot of people here, and I told them, okay, fine, I feel your plight. I'm going to pay for your ticket. I'm going to pay for a one-way ticket to Somalia, where they uphold Sharia law. Let's do that. Have a fund for those who want to implement Sharia law to help them go live under Sharia law.
Yeah, no, they won't take you up on that. Jerry, we got about a minute left for this session. Cynthia, can you hang with us? Because we still haven't gotten to Washington, D.C. for the next hour.
We still haven't gotten to the topic of the day.
Okay.
Jerry, a real quick question for her. We got about a minute left of this session, Jerry.
Okay, Cynthia, there's a guy out there whose name is not Dan Greenfield. It's a guy who calls himself Spengler. He writes for the Asian Times.
Yeah.
David Golden. I think.
He is a fantastic individual. He calls essentially what could emerge in Egypt as North Korea on the Nile.
Yep, I saw that.
And that means that there's devastating economic futures essentially for everybody in Egypt, including those majority who are going to be voting for, quote, a Sharia constitution. Is that the sentiment that you get back from Egypt?
That is a terrifying thought right there, and you remind me of something that's very dangerous, because you know what? that is what's going to happen. It's going to be not just in North Korea, Pakistan. Since the first day I came to the U.S. and I've spoken to numerous lawmakers and think tanks, and I told them, you are approaching a Pakistani model. If Iran gets away with its nuclear program, you are going to have a nuclear Muslim Brotherhood in Cairo, and these are their dreams. They want to hide back behind the nuclear. So they are going to pass the constitution, and it's not going to happen. I'm telling you before it happens, because it's not going to happen through votes. The decision has been made in Cairo and in Washington, D.C.
All right, we have to stop right there on TrentoVision.tv, WNN 1470. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a few minutes with Cynthia and our discussion on Washington, D.C. and her rally
Absolutely.
there the other day.
We're getting to Washington in the next hour.